So we're back working on the Hornet. I got back from vacation. Gonna try to piece this guy back together. And one thing that happened right before I left, oh man, it's like 2 weeks ago now. So I had to remove the passenger side axle because, well, I found out that the driver's side is not the side you want to remove. So if I haven't told you yet, if you want to do this the quick way, you definitely want to remove your passenger side axle, not your driver's side. So that's an extra step for me. And unfortunately, where I had to have my hub pressed off, unfortunately, when he heated it up, you can see that it's actually warped. It's actually bent. So he heated this up so much that it literally warped and bent. So something to keep in mind for you guys if you're gonna do this. Yeah, I don't know, things can happen. So anyway, fortunately for me, unlike any other regular AMC guy, I just happen to have some axles laying around. This one right here is out of a 73 Hornet. It was a V8 Hornet. So what I ended up doing was I just, of course, just removed that passenger side axle. And I gave it to my buddy. And luckily he was able to get that one pressed off. So in my situation, my hub got deformed. So I mean, and one thing is also you got to think about here, you can't just, put a used hub on a different axle. Technically this axle itself is fine, but the hub obviously is shot, and the only way to go about you using that axle would be to put a new hub on it. But I don't have the time for that. I don't have the time to try to figure that out, so that's why I just took that axle out of that car, or out of that axle, the axle shaft out of the axle, and gonna try to use that. And I did measure it, and they appear to be the same length, so that's a step in the right direction. Basically, you're just going to try to get this thing put back together. This is the axle that was out of that axle shaft that was out of that other axle, laying here on my messy bench. So all you have to do, you have to press on the new bearing. That's it as far as the initial doing. So with that said, I got to put some grease in this bearing here. Another thing is, you want to assemble the passenger side first, because there's shims on the driver's side that control the back and forth movement play. And I still need to do a little more research on that, but I guess we'll find out how that works out to see how much play I have, what it feels like. But those shims that I think I mentioned them earlier, and they're right. I got them laying right there. They only go on the driver's side, so gonna work on the passenger side, put that back together first, and once that is installed, then I will work on the driver's side, and we'll go from there. So first thing I know I got to do is I got to pack them wheel bearings. So here we go. All right, now I'm gonna put some bearing grease on this bearing. I'm essentially gonna pack this up best I can. Okay. And I'm just gonna work it into the crevices here in between there, and it should force the grease through. As I work it around my palm there. And it should force the grease all the way through to the other side. Yep, it's definitely in there. You can actually see it. It actually squeezed through onto the other side now, so definitely has, there we go, has nice grease forced all the way through it. Alright, bearing is now packed and it is ready to be installed in the axle. We're over here, somewhat in position. I can shine the light here. This is the passenger side axle. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to clean all that out of there. And I'm going to inspect the inner seal, which is this, let's set the light down for a second. It's this rubber piece right here. There's some excess grease in there. I'm going to wipe that all away and start with fresh. But I'm going to inspect that. And honestly, with the time frame I have right now, it probably wouldn't take much to replace it, but I need to get going. So I'm probably going to end up leaving that seal in unless I really see something damaged on it. So that's where I'm at. But really what I think I would do to get that out of there, I would just probably maybe damage the seal a little bit, like maybe take a punch, jam on it, and maybe get a screwdriver under there and lift it up, then pull it out, you know, or get a slide hammer with some kind of attachment that would stick behind it and then yank it out. But I just don't have the time right now to replace that seal unless it's really damaged and I see something obvious. So with that, I'm going to clean it all away, and then after I clean all that grease away, I'm going to clean the face of this, get that all nice and cleaned up. And actually, I think this is supposed to be a drain hole, and you can see that's completely plugged and crap falling out of it. So I just somewhat half-assed cleaned it out there. But we're gonna get that cleaned up because, well, it's supposed to be clean. All right, I got the grease wiped away, you know, pretty well, and you can see that it literally is just a seal inside of like a metal ring, and it just sits in there. So essentially, you would just pull this guy out, you know, maybe take a punch and jam it right here, maybe deform it a little bit, and you could probably get a screwdriver under there to deform it even more and probably just pop right out. But mine looks just fine. It's nice and pliable, seal seems nice. I'm just gonna leave it alone. So, with that said, I'm gonna now clean this with a wire brush attachment on my drill. Alright, I think definitely a good idea that I put that paper towel in there. You see it picked up quite a bit of sediment, and I'll grab a new paper towel and make sure this is really nice and clean. Okay. Yep. Definitely want to make sure it's clean. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some nice and fresh grease, pack it in there kind of nicely so it has something to eat on. Some nice fresh red wheel bearing grease. Well, I got it lined with grease. There was quite a lot of grease, you know, with the old one that was in here, so I'm not sure exactly how much I need, but gosh darn it, I'm going to start with this, and if it pushes it out, we'll just wipe it away. So I'm going to grab the axle now, and we'll carefully stick the axle in there and see what happens next. Okay. Just carefully stick her in there. Okay. Alright, now I got it into the center section. Okay, there we go, and there she sits. Doing pretty well, I think. Now I know the next thing to do is I got to put on the bearing race, which I happen to have right here. Alright, I think this is going to need some, oh, one thing, oh, I want to put a little bit more bearing grease on there. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. I pulled the race back off, and I just want to come in here and just make sure this thing has plenty of nice fresh grease. Spin her around a little bit. Just let her eat, because you know she's going to be hungry. Okay, and I'll wipe off that excess in just a second. Get her back into place. There we go. She's back in. Now I'm going to take the bearing race again, and it goes on this way, the taper side obviously facing the rollers. And this is where it gets to be a little bit of a tight squeeze, because you know when you're pulling this apart, what you're actually pulling apart, you're pulling the race out of the axle. So that's when you've got that slide hammer, when you're taking this apart, that's what you're trying to break out of here. So it's just going to be a little bit of a tight fit. Hopefully not too tight of a fit, then we have a problem. I'm going to take my hammer here and just... Yep, she's going in ever so slightly. And eventually my hammer started bottoming out, and I wanted to get the race fully seated. Let's see here where I do that. Here it is. I just took I was gentle. Now this isn't, obviously it should be like a brass punch you'd want to use, but I just used this and I just kind of slowly worked it around until it got in here, and it kind of went, the sound kind of changed, like it was in there all the way. And there is some movement here, which I think will be corrected when we go on the other side and we add shims. And hopefully the shims that were in the car will be okay. I'm a little worried because this axle is now different than what was in here. So my shims hopefully don't need to change, but we'll see what happens here. I'm hoping everything will be all right. So right now, it has a little bit of movement. But you got the thrust shaft in the middle, and you got the other axle, and that's going to hopefully help push this thing around. So it's definitely sitting in there. Like I said, just ever so slightly bit of movement, but I think that should be all right. All right, one thing that occurred to me is, as I was talking before, because of this axle shaft is different than what the original car had, and I'm a little worried about this end play. Figure. What I'm going to do is, hopefully this isn't the case for you, but unfortunately it's the case for me because I put myself in this situation by removing the driver's side when I didn't need to. So I'm actually going to assemble the driver's side along with the passenger side, and I'm just going to kind of assemble them and then just kind of see what kind of movement I get. I still need to, on the driver's side, I still need to pack that bearing. I still need to clean up the flange. I got to clean up the shims that go on that side. I got a little bit of work to do on that side, but I'm actually going to assemble these, and then I'm actually going to have to take them back apart, because what you want to do is you actually want to put some RTV sealant on here to help out with keeping water, dust, that sort of stuff, out of that nice new bearing we just put in here with all the fresh grease. So... But what I'm going to do, like I said, is I'm actually going to just put the backing plate on, put the new seal on, and the dust cover, and bolt it together on this side. And then I'm going to go over to the driver's side, do the same thing that I just did here, put it all together, and then just see what it looks like, see what kind of movement I get, and we'll go from there. Okay, so back down here now, I got the backing plate cleaned off. So put the backing plate on. There we go. That would be step one. All right, so now all 4 bolts are pulled through. Now I'm gonna go grab the outer seal, which sits on here, and then the dust plate. So like I said, the only thing here, the step we skipped, was putting in a little bit of RTV on the backside to try to help seal up a little bit. So like I said, we're going to just assemble both sides and just see how the end play is, because I just am a little bit worried with this different axle. Things might have changed a little bit, so we'll see how this goes. Another thing is, I'm a little worried about, I might have drove in that race a little bit too far, so we're going to have to see. Maybe I have to pound the other axle to help pound this race out a little bit. Not sure. So that's why I want to put the other side together first. And hopefully, when if you're going to do this and you just want to do the quick way by just pulling out one axle, you won't even have to worry about what I just unfortunately forced upon myself by taking out that driver's side axle. So hopefully you don't have to mess with this, but I do. All right, so here is the outer wheel seal that we have. It is a National I'm going to use. Part number 8549. S as in Sam. Looks like this. This would obviously be going that way. This would be the outer side of it. I wanted to show you quick the original that was in here. This is how you know you need to replace it. If your seals look like this, probably time for a new one. So there we go. Alright. That's a tight fit actually, so that's a good thing. Alright, and then I'm going to put on the outer dust cap. Cleaned it up a little bit. It's got some rust going on, so it's got some pitting, but just figured might as well clean it up a little bit since I have all the tools right there, and it just takes literally just a couple extra seconds. Alright, well, this is on now. And essentially what you're seeing here, there's a gap here. That's actually where the hub is going to be sitting, when we get there. So that's why there's a little bit of a space. So you see there's still a little bit of movement, and I'm not sure if this race again is moved in too far or not, but hopefully when you get to this stage here, you can just throw it all back together and not have to do what I do. So I'm gonna now work on the driver's side, put that one all together, and we'll see what happens. We'll go from there. Here we go. All right, unfortunately I don't have any end play at all, which leads me to believe I have the passenger side one in a little bit too far. I think I can actually just move everything that way. Maybe I can punch that out a little bit, because definitely it has no end play at all. It needs to have a little bit. So, and plus this isn't even seated all the way. Don't punch that one in all the way on the passenger side. I think the passenger side needs to be flushed. And it was definitely not flush. So, okay, I think I got it. So what I ended up doing, I put the nut on which holds the hub. I don't have my good mallet. Unfortunately, I just had to use this crappy hammer. I can't find my mallet, so that's nice. But anyway, I just kind of banged on it like this. And I believe I moved the other side just enough. Now this side now sits in there pretty nice. And it sticks out ever so slightly, because what I believe what happens is, that's what those shims are going to make up for. Is for the little bit of a distance that actually sticks out. I think that's actually what these shims make up for. And you know what? That looks just about perfect. Now it looks like it's going to sit actually flush. So that makes perfect sense what happened here. And I'm mighty happy with that. Now the bearing seems to sit flush with the new outer part of that axle, because the shims made up for that difference of thickness, and we have a little bit of, just ever so slightly, a bit of end play, ever so slightly. So you know what? I'm gonna call that basically perfect. So yeah, that's actually a nice relief. So actually, what I'm gonna do is, before I put this side back together, I'm gonna take the other side back apart and actually finish it, put the RTV and all that stuff on, and then I'll come back over to this side and finish it over here. Okay, so I got the passenger side taken all back apart again, and the reason why I'm going back over here and doing this side now is because kind of the situation that I'm in. Obviously, if you did this yourself and you just took out the passenger side and that's it, and you left the driver's side alone, well, this would be a little different. But the reason why I stopped working on the driver's side and came back over here is because when you're initially setting these axles up for that end play, you want to have the passenger side already all done. So that's why I could know if I need to hit the driver's side, to move this. Because you can see this bearing actually came out a little bit. It moved, because I had it in there a little bit too much. It's pretty much just about actually flush. So, you know, that actually makes sense. And then if I try to wiggle this ever so slightly, a bit of end play, which I think is exactly where we need to be. So I'm really happy with this, and I'm actually really thankful that everything kind of worked out, because this is not the original axle here. Kind of got lucky here that I had that AMC 20 just laying around, and, you know, for my case. So I'll get a little bit on my hand here and just give this a nice little coat. Like I said, I'm not going to go too crazy. I don't think it needs to be that thick. And plus, I'm also thinking about when in the future, when I want to take this apart, you know, how hard do I want to work to get this to separate, you know? So just a nice little coat. I think that should do it just fine. Just to kind of help fill in some of the gaps that could be in the metal. And there is some in the metal, you know, it's got a little bit of surface rust on it yet, and some pitting from, you know, some rust that was there before I took the wheel and knocked it down. So just a nice skim coat. I put the seal back in here. I lubed up the seal with some wheel bearing grease. Stuck it on now. Now I put a little bit of blue Loctite. A little bit of blue Loctite. So I really don't want this moving around. I don't want it to fall off. I don't want the nuts to back out or anything. So, all right, that's in there. And it still has that ever so slight bit of end play, which is exactly what we want. And I'm gonna go now over to the driver's side and put that one all together. And then gotta put the hub on. All right, so I got the driver's side. The hub is put on. And, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit concerned about the no end play thing, but you know, the fact that I had it last night, I mean, I had ever so slightly movement this way and this way, which the preferred specification that the book calls for is 0.003, and that's what I would say I would have had. I'm not sure what the heck would have changed. It's maybe weather related. So I'm just gonna say it's okay, and we're gonna see what happens. I'm just gonna go with it. So here we are on the passenger side now, and here's our axle shaft, and here's the little key, and we're just gonna place that key somewhere near where it has to go. And I'm gonna grab my trusty hammer. Okay. Just gonna tap it in a little bit. Get a little more. There we go. So there we go. It's in place. Not completely flush, just sticking up ever so slightly. I'm gonna grab the hub. And I'm gonna look where the keyhole is. So we can see that. Keyhole is right there. So I'll line it up. There we go. It's starting to go on. Now I'm gonna grab what I found on the other side to work best was this is a 22 millimeter socket for an impact. And I don't have my maul, I only have this crappy little hammer. But this fits over that just perfectly. I'm just gonna tap it in. You could actually hear the sound changing there, so we know it should be seated. I'm not sure if it's fully seated. So what I'm going to do to remedy that, the issue of doubt, so I'm going to take this, put the nut on, start it a little bit, take my this is my 1/2 inch impact. And this is a axle nut, it's a 33 millimeter. I'm just gonna, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually I mean, this thing puts out some foot poundage. So this thing will probably do over, and also you don't know what it's actually doing either for a final amount. But I'm going to run it in, and I'm actually going to try to seat it a little bit more with some power of the impact, and then back it off, and then we'll officially torque it later. So. Alright, now it's actually touching. It's making contact with the hub now. And like I said, I'm just going to give it some oomph, and then I'm going to back it off. Alright, I know that's a lot of force on there right now, and I'm going to back it off. There. So now it's back off. I feel like definitely this thing is pushed in there as much as it can go, because actually what these hubs do is when you're putting them on there, like if you would get a brand new hub, they actually create their own splines. It's like when you actually buy a new hub, it's a fresh bore in there, and when they make contact with the axle, you're actually forcing grooves in that hub. So I'm making sure this can get into its old hubs and potentially maybe make a couple more. You know, some new ones, for some extra strength. So that's why I thought maybe it'd be nice to just make sure it's really in there. So, all right, I'm gonna get it snug again, and maybe give it a couple ugga-duggas. There. I don't know what that torque reading is, but we're gonna hook the 250-pound torque wrench to it when the car is on the ground. All right, and then I'll take my drum, put the drum back on. Next part of the axle setup is actually taking care of putting that back together, and that is just, you know, cleaning up the cover, putting the new gasket on, some new sealant, and then putting the fluid in. Alright, so the differential is now put back together, the cover is put on. We got the rear brakes bled. And actually, a funny story about that. I'm pretty sure, about 98% sure, we just found a mistake that was performed on this car by a previous owner. If you're bleeding the brakes and bleeding only the rears and wondering why the hell the biggest section or the biggest chamber is losing fluid, and I believe this is plumb backwards, because every AMC I ever known, or pretty much any other car, usually the front brakes get the biggest chamber and the rear brakes get the smallest chamber. So that's interesting, definitely. So I think in the future here, not right at the moment, we're going to take these two lines and flip them. I think that might be the hot ticket for why this thing always had the weirdest brakes I've ever had, or I've ever felt.
Yeah, it was the one time I drove the car, Rob warned me about the brakes. Well, it's pretty much you know, the pedal travel.
It's very minimal.
The slop, and then all of a sudden, all the brakes.
Yep.
So yeah.
So anyway, we still have one thing left to do, and that is to torque these nuts right here. All right, we got the Hornet back down on all fours, and now we're gonna do the final torque.
You want to put it in park there?
Maybe put it in park.
Before I throw it out the firewood.
Now it's back in park. And this hub nut needs to go to 250 foot-pounds, hopefully. There she is. That one was apparently loose. There it is. Yes, definitely want to do this when the car is on the ground. Yep.
To be fair,
it still rolls is a good sign.
and to be fair, this car hasn't ran in. Well, it ran for like 30 seconds last night because we just wanted to start it up, but I've just been sitting for like a week or so, which so it's a little cold-blooded, and
it's
you know.
Always been cold-blooded.
I'll say let her warm up a little bit, and then take it for a test.
Yep.
Don't hear any noises.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I am a little bit nervous. We're kind of untested here. We're gonna go pound on it next week. You know?
Yeah. But that's why we start easy. Do it on dirt first, just to do it a couple times, just to make sure nothing's gonna go catastrophically wrong. And it's better if something goes. Ooh, look at turkeys. It's better that something goes wrong in the yard versus on a drag from home. So hit it. Yep. Ooh, yeah. Let her spin and give her. Give her. The smell of burnt rubber. Yeah, it does pretty good. Locked in immediately. Stayed the whole time. Oh yeah, that's pretty good distance. I think that's a good test. Found some miles on her. Do that a couple more, 20, 30, 45 times.
Yeah, so we just graduated from dirt right to the pavement. Might as well. Screw the shakedown run.
Well, I mean, you start seeing tires start spinning, you might as well go. You might as well go.
One word to mention to you: don't forget to put in your cotter pins. We took it out on the street there, did our little have fun moment, and didn't have the cotter pins in. We came in here and retorqued them, and they definitely had a bit to go. And then a side note of that is, when we torqued these down, this nut was not in the right spot, so I actually had to keep tightening a little bit past the 250 mark in order to get a spot where I could get this cotter pin in. So keep that in mind when you're putting this back together. Cotter pin has to go in, and may have to over tighten it to get that cotter pin to a spot in the castle nut where it goes in. Hey fellas, so it's me, Rob, from the future. And in the future I mean like 2-3 months. Let's see what the heck, it's almost November now. I'm shooting this, and the footage you've been seeing was before we tried going racing, and that was like the end of August, September thing. I'm just gonna kind of go through how the car drives, how does it feel, can you hear anything, and that type of stuff. So honestly, like I said, we're driving right now. We're in the Hornet. Okay, driving on good old-fashioned country back roads. It's a couple days before November, so all the leaves are turning. And frankly, this is one of the last times the car is going to be out before it goes, into storage.
the snow is going to be flying up here in Wisconsin pretty soon. So, but for now, the roads are still dry, and that's fine. So, I mean, I know some of your questions are going to be, well, can you hear it? Does it make clicking sounds? Does it, you know, does it lock up randomly? Does it, you know, does it make you go out of control? You know, I mean, honestly, maybe if this was something, you know, in the winter time, so if you put this in like your winter rig, yeah, I could see that maybe happening. You know, the tires may slip a little bit, you know, gain a little extra track, or lose a little traction, and then it tries to kick in and maybe kick you a little bit. But honestly, no. It's literally like driving with an open rear end. It's, I mean, I you know, okay, I'll tell you what, you know, I'm pretty new with all this locker stuff, which obviously you saw with me putting that locker in. It's not something I've ever done before, and honestly, I've never driven with like a mini spool or, you know, a normal locker ever. But, you know, I've read a lot about them. Of course, I've heard from the guys. You know, they're always saying you go around a little curve, you go around a little this, and it just locks instantly or something like that. And I don't get that. It's literally like driving a normal car. Every now and then, if I go up and down a driveway, if I, you know, little stuff like that, making a tight turn, yeah, I'll hear something a little bit. It'll clunk. It'll kind of move the axle, move the car a little bit. You know, it's not the sound you want to hear in your ear, especially, you know, when you're being a driver and you're listening for that type of stuff. But it's not that bad at all. I'm very, very happy with it. I mean, the price tag, that was a large crack. It's cold outside. It's only about 25, 30 degrees right now. It's cold. So my dash is cracking a little bit. Anyway, that was not the axle, I swear. I don't even know what I was talking about, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Going around corners, going around curves, going up and down driveways. I mean, just like driving normally. And of course, then when you want to juice on it. Now, my little 304 here doesn't have enough power to, you know, from a rolling standpoint, to break them loose. But like, you know, doing a standing burnout, it locks it right up. I mean, I know that how this no-slip is supposed to work. It gives each tire a little bit of leeway before it kicks in the other side. And I don't know the science behind it, but it's kind of like, must have a spring in there of sorts. Again, don't know. You know, as soon as it gets to that one point, bam, she's locked. And honestly, I applaud the POWERTRAX people, the engineers, whoever thought of this. I mean, bravo. And now I got a guy behind me who wants to go faster than me. Not today, buddy. And again, like I said, my car is not no fire-breathing monster. You know, we ran down the track at the drag races at, I think we went, our best pass was 16:16 at 84. So it ain't no fire-breathing monster. And especially with it's all stock, just minus that cam we got in it. And again, it also leads back to the AMC20 Axle. These are the stock two-piece axles. You know, at the time we didn't have the time, and literally, you know, as the prices I saw, really didn't have the budget for the one-piece axles and, you know, all the stuff that went with it. Of course, that stuff would be nice, but this thing ain't putting out, you know, 500-600 horsepower. I'm not rock crawling with it. You know, I'm not doing anything crazy that would require to have that one-piece axle. Bye, buddy. You can go fast somewhere else. Anyway, so look right there. I just made a left turn. It wasn't anything, you know, too, you know, acute angle. You know, it wasn't really steep, but I never heard a thing out of the back. Didn't hear a thing. It's so quiet, you know, and I think that's even what they mentioned there. It's like a quiet system, and it's just what it is. Don't hear a darn thing. It's great. You know, if I had to give a review, and of course, again, this is someone who doesn't really know a lot about the locker world. You know, me giving a review might not be as credible as someone who, well, has had a lot of experience, but if I got to give a review, it's a 10 out of 10. I mean, and again, this is for what I needed it to do, for what it does, how quiet it is, drivability, control, you know, whatever, 10 out of 10. It's exactly what I wanted. I mean, okay, maybe the price point, you know, it's $500 and what odd dollars. I can't remember the exact amount. You know, I bought it off the good old Amazon website. So I probably saved a little bit of money. I got Prime, free 2-day shipping when I got my Prime account. So it came to my doorstep in 2 days, and I had it. Well, I didn't have it installed in 2 days. I had to, you know, the installation process. Now that I've went through it once, I bet you I could have it. You know, if I, you know, from a standpoint, you know, getting the old stuff pressed off or the old hubs pressed off, the axles pulled out, you know, new seals, the bearings put on. I could probably have the thing done in a couple of days, because the reason why I say a couple of days is because I got to take the shaft to my buddy, pop the hub off. You know, that's a process. I don't have a press. So I mean, really, it was actually about a month time, you know, because well, I had a vacation in the middle of putting this all in, and you know, of course, there was all the reading of the technical service manuals. There was reading of POWERTRAX manuals. There was, I studied, you know, CJ guys who wheel their Jeeps, and you know how, you know, and there, you know, actually I didn't even find really anything about the POWERTRAX No-Slip itself. I found 2 videos on YouTube that talked about it, and one of them was really helpful. It talked about the assembly in a Jeep XJ, but of course that's a little different situation, you know, based on how those axles go in there. They got C-clips, we don't, you know, it's just a little different. But what you're doing is you're taking bits and pieces, and you're trying to puzzle it together and make sense of it. So of course, when you're an AMC guy and you're trying to do modifications like this, and you're trying to get up in the real world, you know, trying to keep up with the real world with some of these other guys and their modifications, you know, you can't just open a freaking magazine. You can't just go on a website, you know, and everything comes in a kit. You know, it just doesn't happen. You literally have to study the original manuals. You got to study something, you know, from a different guy, from a different car, from a different make. You know, all these things you got to put it all together. And that's exactly what this project was. And I also hope that by you watching this video, you know, I really hope you know, I gotta tell you one thing for sure: you want to watch it from start to finish. If you're serious about doing this, maybe you might have even missed this if you skipped over it. That's on you. But really, you should watch it all the way through, because you will see what I ran into, you know. And if you don't see that and you skip over it, well, that's on you. But you'll see the adversity that I went through. I mean, and if you already skipped through it, you might want to go back and watch it again. I'm telling you, it will help you. It will help. So, again, with that said, I can't say enough about this POWERTRAX system, the no-slip. You know, they got a thing called a Lock-Right, which is it's a classic locker. You know, classic spool type, click, 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 bam. You know, one click and it's engaged. You know, where this, like I said, I don't know how much feet they give you or how many, you know, how much wheel advancement then it locks, but that's pretty much the difference here. So I know this turned into like quite a long time of me babbling, but I actually think this was really important information and I don't even think I'm going to cut any of this in the editing. It's just raw footage, raw thoughts. What do I think? What do I want to tell you? You know, some of those things that really should be talked about. So with that said, I'm going to kind of quiet for a little bit. I'm just going to hold the camera out the window, and I'm going to do some, like right now I just made a decently good sized right turn into a driveway here. I didn't hear anything in the back, so I'm going to quiet up for a little bit. I'm just going to hold the camera out the window, and you can just kind of come along for the ride. You can skip as much of it as you like. That's up to you. you know. But if you just kind of want to see what normal driving is like in this POWERTRAX, here you go. This is a hard right turn. Completely 100% wheel lock. Nothing. Didn't hear a thing. Face you behind me, so if you could possibly pick something up, which you won't, but if you'd like to have the camera more towards the rear of the car in case you think you can hear something, here you go. And believe me, you won't. So I slid on some gravel there a little bit, and the locker actually did lock, but I didn't hear anything. I could just kind of feel it. You know, you can just tell the tire slips, and then but it's in. But I didn't hear a darn thing. Didn't really hear anything. I think you get the point. It's a pretty gosh darn nice setup. You know, like I said, this ain't no pavement pounder. This is kind of like a pavement princess with a bad attitude. So I mean, perfect for what I needed to do. I mean, I don't know what the limits of it are, but for me, perfect. I ain't no hardcore wheeler. I ain't no hardcore drag racer. I'm a street strip guy with a car that I'd like to have fun with. So with that being said, I really hope you got something out of this whole series. Hopefully you learned something. I know at the beginning of the video I said, well, I hope you don't learn something. That would be cruel. I hope you did learn something. I know I sure as hell did. It was a humbling experience too. Kind of puts you back in your place, you know, like, yeah, you don't know everything there is to know about these AMCs. And I don't think a guy ever would. So, again, thank you for watching. Highly appreciate it. And please, if this video helped you, I would appreciate it if you just left a thumbs up, shared it to anybody you know that might be thinking about doing this setup or this conversion process, you know, whatever. I would appreciate it. And if you want to see more videos on my Hornet or AMCs or Jeeps, hit the subscribe button. That's all up on you. So again, thank you for watching. See you on the next one. Bye bye. Oh shit! No, I'm just kidding. Bye bye.